Welcome back in, or I guess I should be saying Guten Tag this week, right? That's all the German I know. Barth, I don't know if you can sprinkle in any other German
No.
throughout this episode here, but it is another live Patriots Beat podcast right here on the CLNS Media Network. It is Brian Hines. It is Alex Barth from 98.5, the Sports Hub, as the Patriots are wheels up in about an hour or two to head over to Germany to play their Week 10 game against the Indianapolis Colts over there in Frankfurt. So we will get into that game, of course. We have some college football and some draft news even to talk about at the end of the show, but we can start with some Patriots news this week because it was J.C. Jackson and Jack Jones, the cornerback duo that obviously started last week's game against Washington on the bench for the first two series or so. Jack was a little bit longer. It was a benching. They were late. It
Yeah.
was curfew issues, according to Mike Reese. Jeff Howe added with J.C. Jackson. There were some other issues with attitude, performance. Both those guys were involved in some coverage bust the week before Miami. But short story short, J.C. Jackson was sent home for the week. He's not traveling to Germany. They'll see kind of where he is at after the bye, is what it sounded like. And Jack Jones is with the team now, but we'll see where that kind of goes with his playing time Sunday. But that was the big news of the week is those two cornerbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, just when it seems like what more can go wrong for this team, here we go. They're down two guys that if they're going to win games, they need. I think Shaun Wade has been okay filling in, but doesn't quite offer what those two guys offer when they're locked in. And I'm not saying those two guys have played well, they haven't, but I don't think, as we're clearly seeing here, that they're locked in. So it's different. Probably it looks a little different if they're 7-2 compared to 2-7. But just more, it's a question I get a lot. What is the mood like in the locker room? What is the attitude like in the locker room? Are guys still bought in? Are guys checking out? And I think you're starting to see that reality kind of creep out into the public with something like this.
Yep. And we can get into a football perspective, but like Shaun Wade, like those two guys are boundary corners, right? And Shaun Wade, he was so good this summer finally because they moved him into the slot. So now you're going to ask him to play the boundary, which he hasn't had much success in the past. That will be interesting. But back to the locker room aspect of this, I was kind of on the sense like it was a good move to just kind of tell JC to get out right now, right? Like you're a
Right.
2-7 football team. You got a lot of young guys on defense, specifically, even in that cornerback room. You don't want them to kind of see this and think like, all right, well JC can get away with it, so now maybe I can get away with it. We're 2-7. Who really cares if I stick to the program now? But I guess my question to you is do you think he comes back after the bye? Because he was here for a cup of coffee. He already got in trouble. They paid pennies on the dollar for him. He's due no guaranteed money. If they want to cut him, he's probably not going to be here next year anyway because the way his contract's set up, right? Like he still has a really high
Right.
cap hit that they can get out of for free. But do you think he actually reappears here after the bye, or is this just, they're going to kind of cut ties here eventually?
Well, the way that we've kind of, the way we think they're operating, they're still trying to win every game they can. And having him, they have a better chance to win if he's out there playing at the level he can play at. Now, maybe he's out there dogging it. And if they think he's going to go out there and continue to not be locked in and continue to make mistakes, that's different. If they believe, hey, go home during the bye, just get mental reset, come back ready to work. If they believe he'll come back with that attitude, I think they'll welcome him back. I do, because they want to win every game they can. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we see him again. The reality is, if they were totally done with him, they wouldn't have sent him home. They would have cut him.
Would have just cut him now.
Right. So clearly they're not entirely done with him because he's still here.
Yep.
At least for now. I don't know. Watch when the wire drops in 53 minutes, he'll be released. But, hey, I'm not counting on it.
Right when we end the show here.
Right. Naturally.
They'll release him. But yeah, they still have games to play here, and they'll do it this week without JC, so we can start with the Patriots defense this time against that Colts offense. And I know Indy doesn't have Anthony Richardson. They have Gardner Minshew in a quarterback, which is a shame because Anthony Richardson was looking really good those few times when he was healthy. I think the Shane Steichen offense has been impressive. I've been impressed with him, kind of coming from Philly or seeing some of that carryover. But like, how do you think this cornerback group matches up with this Philly receivers? Because it's Michael Pittman, who's a pretty good player. It's Josh Downs. I know he's a little banged up, but he's been electric. And Isaiah McKenzie is back in the
Yeah.
fold, and you're talking about you need your depth corners here, and that's Miles Bryant. So is Miles Bryant's on Isaiah McKenzie here? Like, well, we know how that story tends to go. So do you think that could be an area of kind of concern here, even with a backup quarterback for the Patriots on Sunday?
Well, look, we know. Let's start from the top down. Let's start here. Josh Downs, it sounds like isn't going to play. He's pretty banged up, so they may not have to worry about him, which I guess call it gift and a curse because that's where Isaiah McKenzie comes in. The big thing for me, Michael Pittman, and then Alec Pierce is 6'3", right? Michael Pittman's a big go up and get it receivers. He's 6'4". These are jump ball wide receivers, and we're kind of back to where we were last year, where it's Jonathan Jones, it's Miles Bryant. They do have Shaun Wade, who's 6'1", so that helps, but there's not a lot of size for the Patriots right now at the cornerback position. If Jack Jones plays, that helps. That gives them another body. He's only 5'11". I think he might be listed at 6 feet, but he's listed at 5. No, he's still listed at 5'11". So not a ton of size, and they won't play Jalen Mills at corner. So not a lot of size there against a team that wants to throw the ball up and let their guys go make plays above the rim. That's concerning. You add to that, the Patriots seem to think that Miles Bryant can run with Isaiah McKenzie. They tried it 3 separate times against Buffalo. They never adjusted away from it. It's not Miles Bryant's fault. It's not his game. But this is just something they try to do. So if they try that again, yeah, you're looking at mismatches across the board. And that could be a problem. They need Jack Jones to show up and have a big game this week. They do, because they need that kind of play on the boundary. I'm guessing he'd probably get Pittman with help over the top. You hope Jonathan Jones can take away Alec Pierce. And then, yeah, what it becomes in the slot, you got to figure something out, but it'll probably be Miles Bryant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something worth watching there. We know the history. And I mean, again, it's not Anthony Richardson, but like Gardner Minshew isn't a slouch, right? Like, he's been in this league a while now. He's had some success. I know he's like tied with Mack for most turnover worthy plays this year, but like the offense is still in Indianapolis. Like, it's still, moving the football. They're having some success. Like, Minshew's still capable of doing that, even making plays with his legs. Like, that was one thing when I was watching them. Like, you talk about Sam Howell last week running around back there, extending plays and hitting all those long completions when the pass rush can't get home or can't bring him down. Like, that's something Minshew was doing. So again, if you allow him to extend plays, and I know they'll have some, RPOs with him where he doesn't, he can run, he doesn't, not a huge threat in that type of game, but like, he can extend plays. He can make you be aggressive and hurt you in that area too.
Yeah, the one thing about Minshew, I'll say this. I was actually just pulling this number up for my game preview. That'll be up on 985thesportshub.com tomorrow. As much as I just said they have those mismatches across the board, quarterbacks got to be able to get them the ball, make plays consistently. I like Gardner Minshew. I do. I think he belongs in the league. I think he's probably somewhere between the 30th and 40th best quarterback in the NFL. Or call it 25-35. Low-end starter, high-end backup. If that's the guy... Now, look, for the Colts, it's a season-long thing because Richardson's out for the year. But as a backup, as a guy that you need to plug in for 3 to 4 games and hope he wins you 1 or 2, I think he's very capable of doing that. This isn't a guy this isn't one of these like second-year wash-up quarterbacks, just some guy out of the Big Ten who managed to hang around because he has a high football IQ and, he's not really going to make plays in a game. No, he can handle himself. Gardner Minshew can handle himself. That being said, I don't know that he can actively go out there and win you games. I'm going to give you some numbers here, Brian. Actually, see if you can guess this. Gardner Minshew's thrown for over 300 yards 8 times in his career. I don't have his number of starts. I should. One of them was as a backup. So I guess I'll give you I'll give you number of starts. Gardner Minshew's made 29 starts in the NFL. He's thrown for over 300 yards 8 times. How many of those games do you think he's won?
3.
0. None.
Okay.
Gardner Minshew's never won. They're trying to make the show interactive a little bit. Gardner Minshew's never won throwing over 300 yards in a game. Drop that number down to 250. So 250 passing yards, that's not that massive of a number. It gets done. He's 3-11.
Okay.
He can win games. Like, his teams can win games with him in there, but he's not a guy that you're going to be like, all right, we need you to throw for like 270 and 3 touchdowns. Go win us the game. So we'll get to the Patriots defending the run in a little bit because the Colts want to win the game running the football, but they do still have a chance, oddly enough. They do still have a chance, even with the mismatches at receiver, just because Gardner Minshew is going to need to be able to make plays consistently, and can he do that?
Yeah. And it's kind of like Josh Allen in a way. Well, he's going to gift you some. Like, he might gift you 1 or 2, and you just have to either catch it, like catch the interception or recover the fumble. Like, there might be a few plays there and there to have, and you just have to make them against Minshew. But before we talk about the run, someone asked here in the comments, thoughts on Michael Pittman as a fit for New England next season. We know New England's going to need some wide receivers, and Michael Pittman, I believe he's only 25, 26 years old still. He'll be an unrestricted free agent. I don't know if Indy will be pretty willing to let him leave with a young quarterback, but I don't know. Do you like Pittman as a potential fit there next year?
Yeah, I think so. I've gone back and forth. So I was on with Evan earlier on Catch 22, and he really likes Pittman for the Patriots. I just think they've struggled with those big body jump ball receivers in the past. Now, maybe it's a new offense, a new offensive system, new offensive coaching staff, all of it. In that sense, I like him as a player. I just, for this, the way this team operates on offense, I've seen them bring that player in too many times, and that guy comes in and struggles. So maybe, I guess that's such a me fence sitting answer. If it's still this current coaching staff, no. If you're going to overhaul the coaching staff and you just want because I think other offenses, there is a role for that guy too. If you want to upgrade over Devontae Parker, yeah, he's a guy I would absolutely consider.
Yeah, like that's what I was going to say. I think he's a better like intermediate short route runner than like a Parker or N'Keal Harry, like some of those guys they've tried in that role. But that's also a good point. Like, as much as we're excited about the draft and trying to get all these targets or maybe even free agent targets like Pittman, like the first domino that has to fall is you have to know what scheme and what system you're putting these guys in, whether it's still Bill and Bill or it's Bill and someone else or it's Mayo and O'Brien. Like, that's going to be the first first domino that has to fall. So that'll be interesting. I do like Pittman, but yeah, I could see it going either way. And I'd also kind of be surprised if Indy let him out of that building. But, money talks.
Yeah, ultimately, I don't think he leaves Indy either way. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. But back to the Sunday game, you mentioned it. Indy wants to run the ball at you. We all seen what Jonathan Taylor firsthand can do when he went, Mack's rookie year in that 21 game when he went over 150 yards, I believe. He had that big 60-something yard touchdown to ice the game. So he's one of the best backs in football, I would say. It seems like he's getting more healthy, too, as the season goes on. He started the year on PUP. And behind him, Zach Moss is having a career year, too. So that's kind of Dietrich Wise called it a two-headed monster back there in that Indy backfield. And you mentioned the Minshew stats, right? Like 300 yards, he doesn't win. Like, they want to run the ball. They want to, not take the ball out of Minshew's hand, but if they can win the game on the ground, that's how they're going to kind of do it. So it's going to come down to Christian Barmore, who's been awesome the last month, Devon Godshaw, who I know you loved his game last week, and Juwan Bentley, these big run stoppers for New England to slow that rushing attack down.
Yeah, I think especially, you've got to win at the point of attack. Taylor's actually averaging more yards after contact this year than he is before per carry. I think it's like 2.3 after contact, 1.8 before contact when he's handed the football. So you got to get to him early. And you mentioned Bentley there. Like, that's a good point in some of those second level players. But I think really Godshaw and Barmore are two massive players for the Patriots in this game. And they were, like you said, like, I thought they were the two best players on the field for the Patriots last week defensively. I thought they were the only two good players on the field for the Patriots last week defensively. So you need them to come back again. The thing that helps here, Quentin Nelson has not been like, he's been fine, but he hasn't been good. He's been he's not himself right now.
He's not like the Quentin Nelson from 2 years ago or whenever he was like an all-pro and mashing people's heads in. Like,
look, he'll still make the Pro Bowl because people vote blindly, but he doesn't look like a Pro Bowl player. He does his PFF run block, especially against the run. His run blocking grade's like 56.3. It's the worst of his career by a wide margin. He hasn't been good, plain and simple. He hasn't been good this year. So, and that's carried over to the entirety of the Colts interior offensive line. That's a potential mismatch in favor of the Patriots. Barmore and Godshaw versus that group, and it's somewhere the Patriots need to win.
Yep. And I mean, Barmore, we talked about it Monday after last week's game, but he's just been maybe their best player the last 4 or 5 weeks there. He's been a force. So another big game from him. Godshaw would be big in that area. And like pass rush, we keep saying it, like it's been brutal without Matthew Judon, but they got to get home and again, like contain Minshew and bring him down because you don't want him extending plays. He can burn you there like Sam Howell did last week. But any other last notes, thoughts, anything else you got on the Patriots defense there or that Indy offense?
No, I think that's pretty much it on that side of the ball.
All right. So we can hear from our friends at FanDuel very quickly, and then we can get over to the Patriots offense.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
All right, we do have a little news here.
Yep. Good thing we just went to the offense.
Yeah. So so both teams released their injury reports, and I didn't know this. I guess because of the travel, they give guys game statuses today. Oh, I guess because of who's not traveling. So this is normally we get game statuses on Friday. It's just practice status. For the Colts, it's a little different. For this week, it's a little different. Real quick, I said before, Josh Downs probably isn't going to play. So the Colts have ruled out Julius Brents and Drew Ogletree. They did not rule out Josh Downs, although he didn't practice today. So Ogletree and Brents both didn't practice Wednesday and Thursday. They're both out. Downs didn't practice Wednesday and Thursday, but they haven't ruled him out yet. But that would tell me that it's trending towards him being out. And then, Brian, if you want to do the Patriots half of things, which is the bigger news. But
yep. So the offensive side of the ball, the Patriots ruled out offensive tackle Trent Brown. He'll miss his second straight game, and Devontae Parker as well with a concussion. J.C. Jackson too, but we expected that one. So I was going to start with the offensive line actually because we also had some news earlier this week. Adrian Clem, the offensive line coach, is away from the team right now with a health-related issue. That's, all Bill Belichick wanted to go into detail on that. So you obviously hope he is okay, one, but two, like this, it's been a weird year in that offensive line group with, the offseason. Calvin Anderson missed a lot of time with the illness. He's back on IR with another illness and now Clem. So kind of just a weird year there. And, Billy Yates, the assistant, has been here the last few years. So you'd expect him to kind of step up. I know, Andrews, Cole Strange talked about like that's a pretty seamless transition. Also, like James Ferentz, he's on the practice squad. He's looked like he's kind of just been a coach on the sideline throughout the year so far. So, you assume he'd be a part of that mix as well as a veteran in that room. But no Trent Brown again, so you'd expect it to be Connor McDermott Bill also said it was Wednesday, I believe, that Michael Onwenu is staying at right tackle. So looks like you might have the same configuration as you did last week with, Cole Strange, City So at your guards, David Andrews obviously at your center, and then McDermott and Onwenu as your tackles, which for the most part I thought worked pretty well. Like Mack was under pressure, I think 25, right around 25% of the time. So there's a play or two there where McDermott or Onwenu gets beat, but I thought for the most part it was a pretty solid configuration for that offensive line.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just catching up. I was trying to get that information out there. Well, I said last week I was surprised how well the offensive line played without Trent Brown last week, and that's not to say they were perfect. They were not, but I thought in a game without your best offensive lineman, they did better than would be expected, especially given who their competition was. One of the best fronts, one of the best defensive fronts in football. So Colts, they'll have to deal with DeForest Buckner. That's a big one. Cole Strange got benched last year against the Colts. Cole Strange got benched last year against the Colts, and DeForest Buckner was a big part of that. So we'll have to see how they handle him. But I'd feel a lot worse if not for last week's performance. I think last week's performance gives you a reason to be optimistic, but they did have Adrian Clem for that game. So we'll see how they adjust.
Yep. That would be something worth monitoring. But I'm blanking on the other Colts defensive tackle who's suspended.
Suspended.
Didn't they Grover
Grover Stewart. Yeah. Oh yeah. Didn't he cheap shot? Who did he cheap shot? He cheap shotted somebody.
I thought it was PEDs. Maybe.
What am I thinking of?
I don't know. But they are missing Grover Stewart, so one
Who's
less
the guy
guy.
that punched? Oh, or is that in the college game where the defensive tackle punched the offensive lineman in the nuts?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was college, I believe.
And somebody took a shot at Justin Herbert. No, you're right though. Grover Stewart PEDs. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So it's Grover Stewart they're missing. So they're down one defensive tackle there to make life a little easier. But yeah, Cole Strange is the big one there. Because, I thought he played well last week, but he still had trouble with Jonathan Allen and those big Commanders defensive tackles like handling power. And that's the thing we've talked about all along with Cole Strange as a smaller guard there. How can he handle power? So Buckner will be a good test there. But I mean, with no Stewart and with that offensive line, I kind of expect them to run the ball a lot this week. And you starting to see Ramondre look like Mondre, and I'd be kind of surprised if he doesn't have a big role, a lot of touches, Zeke probably too, but even as a pass catcher, targeting him against some of those linebackers like they did last week. And so I'd expect a good amount of Mondre in this game.
And you're going to have guys, this is a game, guys are going to be tired, right? Dealing with the jet lag, all that. You're going to be able to bully people in this game. And I'm with you 100%. I think this is a big ground and pound game for the Patriots if they can get it.
Yep. So what do you want to see from Mack then? If they're going to be running the ball, just turnover free and
just look calm. Just don't look panicked. Set your feet, throw. That really just the basics, just good fundamental quarterback play. I don't need to see him throw for 300 yards. I don't need to see him throw for a bunch of touchdowns. They should be able to win this one ugly. Now they should have been able to win last week ugly and they didn't, but what's the number, Brian? What's the number for points in this game where you feel good? I think if you get to 24 points, and that's not necessarily a small ask for them, but they don't have to hang 30 points this week like we thought they might have in games earlier in the season.
Yeah. No, yeah.
I want to see. I want to pull up the line on FanDuel and actually see what the. So Patriots. All right, so it's 43.5. So call it 44 points over two. So and it's a 1.5 point spread. So it's
like 23.
By two. Yeah, so they're looking at like a 23-21 game. They have the Colts favored it.
Yeah.
But 24 points should win you this game.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a massive undertaking, especially if you're able to run the ball.
But with this team, kind of a massive ask because it's a grind to score 17 points every week. They need some turnovers, back to the defense. They need a turnover or two to help them get in that range. So, I think you kind of nailed it with Mack. It would be nice just to see him calm and relaxed and settled in the pocket. We all talk about the footwork and the fadeaway throws. And I don't know if they're just going to all of a sudden vanish. I highly doubt that. But yeah, if you could see him calm and just, take what's there. If they're running the ball a lot, they're probably going to work the quick game a lot. And then there might just be like those 2 or 3 plays downfield where, the one going around last week, the one where he missed Gesicki up the seam, like those are the ones, if you can let him develop and stay true and confident in the pocket and hit those, just like 2 or 3 explosives might be enough to kind of win you this game. So that's kind of where I'm at with Mack this week. Again, like the last 8-9 games, it's the player evaluation and it's Mack's addition to kind of stay around here next year on that last year of his rookie contract. And if you could have a good game going into the bye, that might be big for his confidence to help during that last stretch.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Just something, because he's still playing for his job in 2 different ways. One, this is an audition. Basically, can he show the coaches enough that, hey, we should keep, all right, he figured it out in the second half. We can build on that. We'll give him a shot. We'll bring him into camp as the starter next year. But there's also that element of, can he keep them out of position of drafting his replacement? We'll get into the college quarterbacks in a little bit. And by the way, there is some the games this weekend, but there's some college quarterback news today. I'll explain that in a minute, but he's got to keep them out of range to draft his replacement. And that means winning games, and winning games means playing a clean game, especially when he doesn't have the kind of defense he's had the last couple of years to bail him out.
What about his job for the rest of the year? Because I still don't think they're going to go away from him. But if this game blows up, I mean, the bye would kind of be the time if you're going to make a quarterback change, right? Like, do you think there's any part of that could unfold? Again, like, they've told us what they kind of think of those other 2 quarterbacks on the roster. But again, if there was a time to make a change there this year, it would probably be after during the bye, especially if Mack maybe has a blow-up game again against the Colts.
Sorry, say that again. You cut out.
Like, if there was a time to, you mentioned he's playing for his job, his auditioning for next year, but is there maybe an audition for the rest of this year? Because if it's bad and it blows up, like, this is the time to make a change, maybe to Will Grier, or you give Zappy 2 weeks and see what he looks like as a starter. I know they cut Zappy, that they cycled through that 3rd quarterback spot, but like, this would be the time to theoretically do so if they were going to do that.
It doesn't feel like it's going to happen. I think they would have done it at this point if they were going to do it.
Probably would have done it. But last thing, offensively, who's Mack throwing to this week? Are we going to see Booty out there in Germany, or is it just going to be 12 plays of Tyquan again and Jalen Reagor? Or, I think, Demario Douglas will say he popped up on the injury report with an ankle injury. He looked pretty good out there, though. I'd be surprised if he doesn't go. So you'd expect him to have another big role, but how do you see that room kind of shaping out around Demario?
So the big question here, because again, there's no Devontae Parker again this week, and that was going to be part of it. When he comes back, how many snaps are waiting for him? He's out. Tyquan Thornton's benching last week. Does it carry over? Because he got pulled early. That's not a guy that made one mistake and it was a little slap on the wrist. That was pretty extreme. If he's benched again, I mean, do we finally see Kayshon Boutte? That's kind of where we're at. I think it's probably going to look similar, where it's Reagor and Douglas are your 1 and 2. Juju rotates in as the 3rd with Gesicki. If Boutte's active, maybe he rotates in there and you see Tyquan Thornton as a package player, 4 or 5 snaps. That would be my guess. I'd like to see them give Tyquan another shot just because the guy was a 2nd-round pick. You need to figure out. You're 2-7. What do you have to lose? I'd like to see them throw him out there because he got open. He did get open twice in that game, and Mack missed him once. And I think if Mack hits him, he catches the touchdown. It's a very different conversation. Well, he could have gotten out of the route quicker, but that's not the point. Yeah, that's what it is to me. Is Thornton permanently benched? And if he is, there is zero reason to not play Kayshon Boutte because you don't have enough wide receivers if you don't at that point. It doesn't matter what you think of him. You need the bodies on the field.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, just we say it every week, like play the young guys, see what you have there because you have nothing to lose. But I mean, if Kayshon Boutte isn't even active this game, which knowing how the last few weeks have gone, he probably won't be. But like,
right, I'm not expecting him to be.
yeah, like that's just gonna be crazy because Juju's not giving you anything at that spot. Obviously, Kendrick Bourne's hurt, and even like it's not the same position. Or I mean, I guess they played Boutte at the X when Parker was out week 1, but like Jalen Reagor's not giving you anything. You won't even let Tyquan play. It takes Tyquan 3 drives until you have to put him on the bench because he makes a mistake or something. So I don't know. I would just like to see Boutte out there and just get the chance to. Everyone says he sucks. He sucks. He's a 6th-round pick. He's not playing well in practice. He can't get on the field. Like, that's probably why he's not on the field, because he's not playing well in practice. But I'd just like to see him in a real game again, besides his rookie debut in week 1 against the Eagles. So just to kind of see how that looks. But I still don't expect that. I'd be pleasantly surprised if Boutte's active. I'll say that. But yeah, play the young guys, see what you have. But unless you have anything else offensively, we can talk some special teams quick. In Germany, we have a scoreboard watch potentially with some punters hitting the scoreboard last week. And also we could mention it's this grass hybrid field. It's like imported from Holland or something. So didn't seem like they had any issues with it last week, but I asked Cam Acord about it, and he's like, just something, might have to change out cleats, or it might help with the punts, seeing how the ball bounces. So just a few nerdy things to watch in that department in the special teams.
And the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you say you cut out my internet spinning? Did you say the scoreboard?
I said I mentioned it briefly, but I figured you would like
we'll
to
see.
expand
We'll see
on
if
it.
Bryce Behringer can hit the scoreboard. That's pretty much it. So it's pretty enclosed. There's not going to be much wind. I don't know what the sight lines are, right? If guys are picking up the ball or not, in that sense. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. The scoreboard, and just can special teams be better? I mean, aside from it being in Germany,
no
too
penalties.
many bad penalties this week. Too many bad penalties last week. Got to cut down on those 100%.
Yep. All right. Well, unless you got any last thoughts on the game, we can transition to a little college talk, and we can hear from our other friends over at LinkedIn before we get into that discussion.
Yes, we can. I don't have to read it this week. There it is. Let me tell you that this show is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can't trade in business. You got to just go out and sign free agents and find people, and LinkedIn Jobs will help you do that. They'll make it easy as well. Add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Adding the right team member can make a big difference. You can have that kind of addition as well. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/beat. That's linkedin.com/beat, BEAT, to post your jobs for free. Terms and conditions apply.
All right. So college football, big week for a lot of the quarterbacks. But before we kind of dissect into that, there was some college draft news, however you want to call it, the other day, because I believe it was Adam Schefter reported that college underclassmen who are going to the draft can now participate in these AllStar games like the Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine Bowl, which we typically reserved for seniors only. So I kind of have mixed thoughts on this. Like, we get to see some of these better players in these bowl games. It opens the door for someone like Caleb Williams to play one of these All-Star games, but it also, if you invite Caleb Williams, you might knock off a lower level prospect from a small school who kind of needs a good week at the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl to maybe be on the draft radar. So that was my kind of first thoughts on it. I don't know how you kind of feel on these underclassmen attending these All-Star games.
Yeah, exactly the same way. I think that it is going to be good to see juniors in these environments, but does a junior from Alabama who wouldn't be invited in the past, does he knock off a guy like Kyle Duggar, who's coming from a D2 school, or a guy like Pop Douglas, who didn't have a draftable grade? Most people did not have him draftable until the Shrine Bowl. And if you go look at mockdraftdatabase.com, which does a great job of tracking these things, you see his spike with Tamario Douglas during the Shrine Bowl, and it never really came back down like that. And the teams do their own research, but I think there is something to be said for visibility, for the visibility of a player. So in that sense, it hurts. But if there is a silver lining to it, one, I think part of the reason they're doing this is more and more of the top prospects, like the top prospects, I'm talking top 20 draft pick guys, they're opting out of these games altogether. They're saying, if I go, I can only hurt my stock, or maybe they go and talk to teams. They go to do the interview process, but they don't participate in the practices or the game. We saw Zay Flowers do this last year. I'm trying to remember, one of the big quarterbacks did it down in Mobile as well. And maybe it's just having more room for those guys. The other thing is, and Evan pointed this out today, maybe we get another bowl game added. And I would love to see them add, you have the Senior Bowl, add the Underclassmen Bowl, and just give them their own game. I think that would be great, or mix them in or whatever. But, people don't realize that there's the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl are the big ones. The HBCU Legacy Bowl has kind of built up some notoriety the last few years. You've got better players coming out of that. Teams are putting more on that. And then there's there's the Hula Bowl. There's the NFLPA Bowl. So maybe you see some of these games, either those games become more high profile and or other games get introduced. So there are ways that everybody gets to be a part of this. But at the end of the day, the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, those are the two premier games. Those are the games that are going to get the most eyeballs from the fans. And there's only so many spots. So maybe more guys choose not to do it. Maybe they add spots. I don't know. But goes kind of both ways.
Yep. And the bowls, like, they don't have to accept them, right? Like, that was another part of it, right? Like,
so that's the other thing. Like Jim Nagy could just be like, all right, it's great they're allowed, but this is the Senior Bowl. And I'm only taking, because they decide they're independent entities. They're partners with the NFL, but they're not like NFL run operations.
Yeah.
It's Jim Nagy and it's Eric Galko, who we've had on the show before. And Eric does it. Not that Jim doesn't, but I've got a chance to talk to Eric about the process and how he goes about selecting the players. And I know it's not an easy process. It's not a simple process. There is a ton of work that goes into that. And with him, it's a little different just because, again, they're still trying to get to where the Senior Bowl is. I could see Jim Nagy just being like, all right, that's great. They can. I'm only taking seniors. That's what I'm doing. That's what the game is. I also wonder if some of this is to incent the NFL incentivizing redshirt sophomores and juniors to come out instead of staying, where there's the NIL money now. There's more incentive for them to stay in school. So there's that element of it too. The NFL may kind of push it, but yeah, it's very possible that the game say, okay, that's all well and good, but we're just going to keep taking seniors because it's what we do. So there's that possibility too.
Yep. It'll be interesting how that unfolds. Definitely positives and negatives, but speaking of some of those quarterbacks that could be playing in that, they have lots of big games for those top-ranked quarterbacks this week. We have Caleb Williams going up against, one of the best defenses in the country in Oregon. Drake May has his best test of maybe the last 2 years against that Duke defense.
Yeah.
Who else? Michael Penix, really tough defense in Utah, who's given, Caleb Williams a lot of problems the last few years, and JJ McCarthy too. Good tests against that Nittany Lions Penn State defense. So a lot of these top QB prospects, big week for them against some top-notch defenses. Anyone's, you're going to be watching extra closely. I know we're going to be watching all of these guys, obviously, right, but extra closely. You got your eyes on anyone?
Well, first off, it's interesting that the database that I use that kind of collects all the mock drafts and puts them together. As of today, they updated it today. There's a new consensus QB1, or there's two. There's a new consensus 1-1 and a new
Ooh.
consensus QB1.
Okay. 1-1 is Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison is now the consensus top player in this draft. And that can change. And that for right now, Marvin Harrison is now that's different than the consensus mock draft. They probably still consensus. I didn't look at the consensus mock. Probably still has quarterback going first because the big board is just ranking the players. You don't account for position or needs or whatever. But according to the consensus of the draft experts, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player in this draft. I know some individual people have had it for a while, but that's now the consensus opinion. And Drake May is now player 2, QB1. Caleb Williams, player 3, QB2. I thought it might take the Duke game this weekend for that to flip, but apparently the Washington game, although I thought Caleb Williams played very well against Washington, he's not the reason they lost that game. I know some people were bothered by the crying. It didn't bother me. 2 weeks ago, you guys were saying he wasn't competitive enough, and he checked out, and he didn't care. What do you want? Was it a weird moment? Objectively, yes, it was weird. I'm not going to not draft the guy because of it. He's still immensely talented. But I guess that did sway a lot of people. Drake May did have a good game, not last week, but he did last week, but he played Campbell. That doesn't count. Had a good game 2 weeks ago against Georgia Tech. Again, a good game and a loss, kind of like Caleb Williams had. So let's see QB1 Drake May, what he looks like against it. QB1 tears up this defense. Like plain and simple. QB1 tears up this defense. This Duke defense, as good as they are, and they're good. 176 pass yards allowed a game. So I'm excited to see that. Caleb Williams against a good defense in Oregon. Obviously, that game holds weight just because of who he's playing. It holds less weight for Bo Nix. I know I've kind of brought that game up as a big QB game. People are like, what about Bo Nix? He's playing too. I mean, yeah, going head-to-head with Caleb Williams is interesting. I just that Washington that USC defense. I said this on the air with Taylor last night. I believe the technical term to describe the USC defense is ass. They're just bad. They just fired their defensive coordinator. They're 124th in the nation in scoring out of 133 teams. Bo Nix can only hurt his draft stock this weekend. Yeah. He should, and he probably will, but he should tear that USC defense up. If he starts throwing picks, if they're not putting points on the board, that's not a good sign for Bo Nix, plain and simple, because that defense, again, technical term, ass. The other, so that's a big game. The other big games this weekend, I want to pull up my notes because the cool thing is there's 6 games this week with, top-ish of the board, top to top-ish of the board quarterbacks. And where did my thing go? Hang on. Anyway, of those 6 games, all 6 are, here it is. All 6, 5 of them are in different time slots. So we get started at noon. J.J. McCarthy against Penn State. And that's another big one. That Penn State defense is really good.
They're good.
And more importantly, they're really good. And this is, hang with me for a second, because I know we talk about, this quarterback faces this defense. It's a good defense against the pass. The Penn State defense is really good against the run. And the reason that's big in this game is J.J. McCarthy has not been tasked with a lot. He only throws the ball 22 times a game. They don't throw the ball a lot. Michigan has 2 options in this game. They either still run the ball, go strength on strength, try to grind out like a classic Big 12, a Big 10, 20-13 win like Ohio State did against Penn State a few weeks ago, although that game was in Ohio. Penn State has home field advantage in this one. Or Harbaugh looks at it and says, all right, this guy's a Heisman favorite. I don't know why he is, but this guy's a Heisman favorite. People, for our first round pick, Heisman favorite quarterback, let's put the ball in his hands in a big game and see what he can do.
And that one's
I'd like to see
or at Penn
in Happy
State
Valley.
too, right?
That's in Happy Valley. So on the road against a really good defense, you're going to need to throw the ball to win. There's all that noise around the program right now. I know there are some people who are saying, let's see what he can do when he doesn't have the signals. And I think that there's some legitimacy to that.
Yeah.
If J.J. McCarthy really is the first round pick, you're all telling me he is. He goes out and he plays well in this game and Michigan wins it. Michigan will probably win it either way, but if they win it, because Blake Corum, the vacuum salesman, runs for 200 yards, right? And J.J. McCarthy goes like 10 for 12 for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, I'm not going to care much about that. I want to see J.J. McCarthy go out and win that game. I think that's a big one. So that's at noon.
Throw it 35 times on the road, win the game. Maybe maybe a QB3 game. He establishes himself as the QB3 behind
Exactly.
the two top dogs there. But yeah, who else do you have?
So then at 2:00, you got Shadur Sanders against what's quickly become a very good Arizona team. They've been one of the best defenses in the country in the last
Jed
month.
Fish.
Jed Fish doing a very good job out there. I've said it before. I'll say it again. And I'm not alone in this. I don't think Shadur Sanders is declaring this year. I think he's going to go back for his senior year, but just add a game to the list in the 2:00 window. Maybe you skipped out one if the end of Penn State, Michigan's really close. 3:30, you got Michael Penix at Utah. We kind of already talked about that. Utah's defense, the giant killer, NFL-style defense. Want to see how Penix handles that. Also, just a much more physical defense, and he'll face that NFL level of physicality. You also have a 3:30, and this is a guy, I know one of the day two guys a lot of people like. I've been asked about him. I haven't talked about him as much as I wanted to, and that's Jordan Travis of Florida State. And he faces Miami, which is a top 30 defense. And that one may be more about the guys around Travis than Travis, right?
Yeah.
You've got Keon Coleman, obviously the big name there. But let's see if Jordan Travis goes out and lights up Miami. I think he solidifies his status as a day two pick. So it's a big game for him. So it's 3:30, 8:00, Drake May at Duke. And then you have Caleb at Oregon at 10:30. So full day of quarterbacks on Saturday, full day of quarterbacks. And I'll pull this up, because this is a deep name, but this is a guy I've been tracking for a few years now. Jacob Cowing. I don't think he's quite as quick as Pop Douglas. The comment says Jacob Cowing is the next Pop Douglas. I don't think he's quite that quick. This guy is an excellent slot receiver. Started at, I believe it was a UTSA or UTEP. I think it was UTEP.
UTEP, I think.
Yeah, and put up just absurd numbers. Transferred to Arizona a couple of years ago, so he's going to have that Jed Fish connection. Just, I mean, a route running master. He's not the biggest guy, 5'11", 170. He's a true slot receiver. But last year, Brian, and it was a bad Arizona offense last year. Like, they were one of the worst. I can actually tell you exactly where they ranked offensively, but they were not a good offensive team last year. He caught 85 passes for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. That was his second 1,000-yard season. He's probably going to have another one this year. That's a guy to know if the Patriots want to go receiver early day 3.
Yeah. They'll have the intel with Jed Fish there, so they'll be interesting. One more name I wanted to throw at you.
Yeah.
Hold on. I was looking for the game. Stalling. Jaden Daniels, LSU quarterback. How do you think he played against? I know he got hurt. You know, he took that big hit against Dallas. Turner might not play with that concussion against Florida this week. But what do you think of what he did show you against Bama? And I mean, I think he's quietly becoming, or not even quietly, just becoming like a real consideration for like early second round. Like
Yeah.
he's been. I know there's. I'm kind of like his frame kind of concerns me. Like he's 200 pounds. He's pretty light, but like he's a baller. Like he's a good quarterback, like extending plays with his legs, making plays in the pocket. Like he's been pretty impressive, I thought.
Yeah, he can play. We talked about him last week in that game against Alabama. Was his chance to put himself in the first round conversation. I don't think he quite did that, but I think he did everything but. I think he's a top 5 quarterback, or trending towards being a top 5 quarterback in this draft. You didn't see any new weaknesses. Yeah. Sometimes when you play those elite defenses, this is part of the reason I stress these games so much. And we've seen this with a guy like Caleb Williams. There may not be a weakness you see in his game when he plays Arizona State, who's the worst team in the Pac-12, just off the top of my head, right? Don't mean to pick on Arizona State. But when they play those defenses that are ranked outside the top 100, or like a bottom 50 defense, certain weaknesses just might not show up. When you play a team like an Alabama, or for Drake May, Duke this weekend, or for Michael Penix, Utah, they can expose those weaknesses a little more, and that's where you build that more complete scouting report. It's not to say that Jaden Daniels doesn't have any weaknesses. He does, and you saw him against Alabama in particular. He doesn't take care of himself. He needs to slide. He needs to go out of bounds. Not that the hit he got taken out on was a cheap hit, but there were other instances where he took hits he didn't need to hit. It feels
like once a week he just gets like leveled, like in a bad spot.
But I don't know that I saw anything from him in that game where I was like, oh, this is new. Okay, here's something that I didn't know about him that's maybe more of a concern. I think you pretty much saw the guy you wanted to see. Great athlete, great arm. tested some windows he probably shouldn't have as a passer. Again, needs to take better care of himself physically, just too confident, basically, which I don't know the last time I said that about a quarterback. He's too confident, but Jaden Daniels might be a little too confident in some of his abilities. I still think he's the, if you want to do the Jalen Hurts thing, right? Which is you have your quarterback in last year of his rookie deal. You're going to let him kind of start the year, draft a guy on day 2, develop him. Best case scenario, the guy you already had in place figures it out, pans out, great. Worst case scenario, essentially, in this case, Mack becomes your de facto bridge guy, and it goes to Jaden Daniels when he's ready. I think that Jaden Daniels is the best option for that. If they feel they need Marvin Harrison Jr. or Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu in round 1, and you're telling me they walk away from the draft with, let's call it, Joe Alt and Jaden Daniels.
Pretty good.
Yeah, they did pretty well. They did, and I know people will complain they didn't take the first-round quarterback, but the other thing about this, so there's the Jalen Hurts thing. I often talk about what the Panthers did. What year was Cam Newton drafted? Was it 11? Was it 10 or 11?
I wanted to say 12, so I guess 11. We'll go 11.
Was it 2012? The year he was? No, it's 2011. I just looked. Okay, so everybody remembers that the Panthers drafted Cam Newton first overall in 2011. I just forgot there. But what people do forget, everybody remembers they drafted him first overall. I'm trying to look things up later. The year before that, they drafted Jimmy Clawson in the second round.
Jimmy Clawson.
Right. And Cam just had this hilarious story about trying to buy the number 2 from Jimmy Clawson.
I was just going to say, I was listening to that today. I've been hearing so much about Jimmy Clawson all of a sudden today, but
basically what they did was they had multiple needs. I don't think they loved any of the first round quarterbacks. Sam Bradford went 1-1 that year. The Panthers picked, I'll tell you where they picked here. They were picking 17th. They actually traded down and they didn't take anybody in the first round. So it's the Patriots. We know they do that, but let's say you don't love any of the quarterbacks. You want to take somebody else in the first round. You draft whoever you want in the first. You draft Jaden Daniels in the second. It's a Jimmy Clawson thing. If they gave Jimmy Clawson a shot and it's like, hey, if he's the guy, great. We have our quarterback. We move forward. If not, well, then we don't have a quarterback. We're probably going to be picking pretty high next year, and they go out and they get Cam Newton. So essentially what you can do is draft Jaden Daniels with Joe Alt. One of 3 things is going to happen. Either Mac Jones ends up being good with Joe Alt, and maybe they go out and get like T. Higgins or Michael Pittman, and it works, and cool, you have your quarterback. Mac Jones isn't good, and Jaden Daniels steps in. Hey, now you have your quarterback, Jaden Daniels with Joe Alt. Now you get to use that first-round pick in 2025 on something else. Or Mac Jones sucks, Jaden Daniels sucks. You're probably picking in the top 5 again. Shadur Sanders, Drew Aller, whoever it is in 2025. Again, I know people are going to get annoyed if they don't take quarterback in the first round. If they walk away with a guy like Jaden Daniels in the second, based on what everything looks like right now, they did okay. They did perfectly fine for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. He's someone who's definitely caught my eye the last few weeks with his play. And again, you prefer Williams or May, but if you're out of that range and you leave with Marvin Harrison or even, Keon Coleman or one of those receivers or Joe Alt, and you can add him in the second round. Pretty good package there. Pretty good way to leave the draft. You're feeling pretty good about yourself. So big college football Saturday all day long and all the windows. And then you can get up early, 9:30 for some wonderful New England Patriots.
I get to sleep in, dude. I'm the only person who gets to sleep in because they're playing. Because
do you not have to do radio early?
There's no Sports Hub Sunday kickoff this week because we're normally 8 to 10, and Pat's pregame begins at 6:30. So they offered me the 4:30 to 6:30 window. I said, I don't know how many people are really going to be listening. But so I get to sleep until 7, which is
there you go.
Late for me on a Sunday. So I get to stay up and watch USC Oregon. I wouldn't get to do that otherwise.
You'll be like getting your beauty sleep. You'll be all rested, and everyone else will be like, oh, here we go again early in the morning. But Pats, Colts, 9:30 over there in Germany on Sunday. Alex and I will be back to break that one down and maybe talk about some of those college football games as well on Monday right here. And then we get into the bye week. We'll have some updates on the show for that week as well. But until then, you can follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth and go read his coverage. I think he talked about some of those college quarterbacks today over at 985thesportshub.com, and obviously lots of Patriots content there as well. You can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines, and go read my Patriots work over at patspulpit.com. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.